Hi everyone, welcome to Tim Burbage Reads. My name's Sid Burbage, and today I'm going to be talking to you about like a 6-month check-in on the different reading challenges that I've got. So the first reading challenge that I set myself this year was to read a different Jack London book every month. And so far I've done that, so big tick. So the first book I read in January was The Cruise of the Dazzler, which I thought was a pretty good boys' adventure story with a hilarious French chef sailor who spoke in like a ho, 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 ho kind of voice, which was quite funny. Number 2 was A Daughter of the Snows that I read in February, and this I thought was interesting because it had a female main character out in the Yukon, which I was not expecting, though it did have lots of racism in it, about just characters getting together and talking about how white people were just better than everyone else. It's just in their nature, and that gave me the ick a bit. Book number 3, which I read in March, was The Kempton Waste Letters. This was a dud for me. It was an epistolary novel about 2 people writing letters to each other about a marriage proposal. One was like a romantic based in London, poet. The other one was a scientist who was very pragmatic, based in California, and it just didn't go anywhere. And it wasn't even a very long book, but I was 80 pages in, I think 50% in, something like that, and the point that they made in the first letter for each character was the same that they kept making, so just didn't go anywhere. And then I skipped to the end and nothing really happened. So then the 4th book I read was one I did not have lined up because I bought it in person under a bridge in London from a bookseller, and it was To Build a Fire and Other Short Stories. And this was brilliant. This was really, really good. With all short stories, some are better than others, but I still think about To Build a Fire and A Piece of Steak regularly. 2 brilliant short stories. And Jack London, actually, all of his work, or his writing style, the economy of it really fits a short story. Then in May, I read The Sea Wolf, which is probably the best book I've read, best Jack London book I've read. Such an interesting character study. I'm now going to sell it to people as Moby Dick, but shorter, which is quite funny because I haven't read Moby Dick. But it's set around a sea captain who is a tremendous character, and there's philosophical discussions, plus a bit of, instead of whaling in Moby Dick, it's sealing, but it's shorter. So I really enjoyed it, and it actually makes me want to read Moby Dick in the future. And then in June, I read the very short, it's like a novella called The Game, which is about another boxing match. Only this time it's someone at the start of their career. I haven't done a review for that yet, but I thought it was pretty good. Very short, so easy to get through. So overall, big tick. Am I still enjoying Jack London? Yes, I am. I'm enjoying the variety, actually. I was expecting lots of books about the Yukon and the gold rush and things like that, but actually there is a bit of variety, especially in the short stories about boxing and Hawaii and like the tropical islands. I was not expecting. Anyway, then my next challenge was the mystery book challenge. So my wife has curated a library of books, one to read every month from our friends and family and from our house, and I have no idea what they are until I open them, and it's been great fun. So the first book I got was very short. It was a biography of Benjamin Zephaniah, which was brilliant. He's one of my favourite poets, and he very sadly passed away last year, and he led such an interesting life, and I didn't realise how hard his upbringing was until I read that book. Then in February, I got The Queen's Nose by Dick King-Smith, which was great fun. I remember it from the TV show growing up. A whole British generation know The Queen's Nose inside out. But actually, one thing that really came across was that Harmony, the main character, was a brilliant main character, and you really got into her head. Then in March, I got The Silmarillion, which was just brilliant. It was hard to read at points because of the prose, because of the pronoun, proper noun bingo. There were so many proper nouns in there, but I got a real sense of sweeping tragedy about the whole thing. I think that's, this is what J.R.R. Tolkien was writing about the whole time, was this story of the Silmarillion, and the Hobbit and Lord of the Rings just happened to be stories within there. I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was really, really good. Then in April, I read The Ride of a Lifetime, the autobiography, memoir of Bob Iger, the CEO of Disney, which I thought was eye-opening and interesting, especially now that things have taken a turn, and because he wrote this just before he retired, and then Bob Chapek wet the bed, and they needed to call him back, and it's been interesting seeing where his mind comes from, especially in terms of usually people at that high level are control freaks, and he's really not a control freak. He's very much a just steering the ship kind of person, and he remains very calm, so it's quite interesting to read that. Then in May, I read The Story of My Life by Helen Keller, which was, again, a book I would never pick up, which is the whole point of this challenge. I didn't really know anything about Helen Keller, and I found it super interesting. The book was actually in two parts. The first is her autobiography, which she wrote when she was 21, which is crazy. And then the second part is her letters to people up until the age of 21, and you could see how much she develops and how quickly she develops. And then in June, I've been reading Memoirs of a Geisha by Arthur Golden. And I think generally I'm coming to cover this in my June wrap-up, but June's just been a rough month reading-wise. I just haven't read that much. I've just been really busy at work, been very tired when I get home, feeling a little bit under the weather, and right now, to quote Cole Porter, it's too darn hot. So my reading has really slowed down. So I'm hoping to finish Memoirs of a Geisha by the end of this month, which is a week, and I've got quite a bit to read. Whenever I read it, I quite enjoy it, but I'm never I want to find out what happens next. And I don't know why that is. I've also found the framing narrative quite confusing, because the only thing I knew about it was that obviously Arthur Golden is not a Japanese geisha, so it's fiction, and I knew that he did loads of interviews with geishas or something. I know there was a bit of controversy there or something, but then the framing narrative is a journalist interviewing geishas, so I got a bit confused there. But yeah, it hasn't grabbed me, but still interesting. And then finally, my other challenge, one more challenge, which was a kind of semi-challenge, was I wanted to read a different fantasy book every month, and I wanted to kind of take a journey through fantasy. And to start with, I read The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan, the first book in the Wheel of Time, and I thought it was okay at best. Then I read the first five books in the Chronicles of Amber series by Roger Zelazny, and I thought that was not very good. I read that in February. Then in March, I read Legends and Lattes, which was a brilliant palate cleanser, just a really, really good read, and did exactly what it aimed to do, and it did it very well. Then I kind of carried over the Silmarillion and used that as my fantasy book for April, which I've already talked about. Then in May, I read Magician by Raymond D. Feist. And that was crazy and bonkers, but I did enjoy it. And then the thing that I set myself for June was to read the first book in the Live Ship Traders, which I think is called The Mad Ship, I don't know, and I haven't opened it because it's really, really big and intimidating, and I've been struggling to read anyway, and I picked it up once, and I was just like, I just can't deal with this right now. So June is not going to be a month for a fantasy book. But, I've started reading Harry Potter with the kids, so maybe we can count that. I won't finish that by the end of the month, though. For this, it's been a much more mixed bag, more so than the library, the mystery books. The mystery books, I've pretty much enjoyed all of them. In some way, I've enjoyed some more than others. They've been a steady kind of 3 to 4, up to 5-star read, while fantasy has been way up and down, and maybe I'm just not a fantasy reader, or actually the only one I've really enjoyed, the only one I've given, I give Silmarillion 5 stars because it's Tolkien and it's just beautiful, but the other one was Legends and Lattes. So maybe I'm more of a modern fantasy reader. I'm interested to keep going with this project of trying to read more classic fantasy, just to get that base level. But maybe I'm just reading the wrong fantasy books. Maybe I should read more modern fantasy. And then the final little topic, which I had forgotten about, was reading books based about Japan or China, because we're going on holiday there. And so far I'm reading Memoirs of a Geisha. I read Abroad in Japan by Chris Broad, which was great. And I finished the Legend of the Condor Heroes series with A Heart Divided. So far I've read 3 books, or 2 and a bit books. I wasn't setting myself a once a month target for those, just kind of picking them up as they went. And maybe in July I need to read something else, especially in China, because Japan has been the focus. But yeah, so that's where I am from a challenges perspective. Am I enjoying the challenges? Yes. Have at times they felt a little bit like chores. Not chores is a strong word, but they're tasks. Yes. Especially when you're not reading a book that you enjoy. Maybe I need to get better at being like, no. But I think for the second half of the year, I'm looking to keep reading Jack London, because I've still got all the books on the Kindle and they're very easy, like just click, 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 you're there. For the mystery challenge, that's one of my key targets, is to read those, because my wife has put a lot of work in to curate that library, and I've still got them all sitting in a pile in my room. For fantasy, I think I need to think about what I want to do next. Maybe if I continue reading, I might read the second Wheel of Time book, because everyone says that's one of the good ones, and then I'm definitely going to read the second Magician book at some point. So maybe kind of prioritize those rather than keep starting new things. And then for Japan and China, just kind of read another 1 or 2, one in July, one in August. August is not going to be a ton of reading because we'll be on holiday, but there we go. So those are my challenges as I'm currently going halfway through the year. Pretty good. In terms of total books, I've read 51 books, but a lot of that was skewed by reading all of those amazing Spider-Man comics at the start. So I was like 11 books in after January the 2nd or something. So reading with the kids, we've now started Harry Potter. So instead, before we would be reading picture books and going through, or reading shorter chapter books like 30, 40, 50 pages. Now we're reading Harry Potter, which is quite a long book, especially for the kids. It's probably the longest book we would have read with the children. So we'll see how it goes. We've got an illustrated edition now, because my daughter was not very happy that the book version that I had as a kid did not have pictures of owls in it. So the new one has pictures of owls, so we're all good to go. Anyway, that's my halfway through the year. Let me know in the comments below how your reading challenges are going, especially if you've got like any thoughts on my fantasy conundrum, because I've got a bit of a tricky situation there to figure out which way I go for the second half of the year. Anyway, I've been Tim, thanks for listening, and get out of my house!